Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Selling Without Fear seminar. I am really excited to have you here today. If you are here already, looks like we've got a few folks already logged in. Welcome. We're going to get started right away, and I want to know where you're joining us from. I know I've been messaging a lot of you. I've been talking to several of you, and been just kind of getting an idea of what it is that you're trying to learn about selling, especially selling without fear. So, for those of you who are hopping on, I know a couple of you had asked me already if you are, like, if you're not able to make the full event just because of time zone constraints. I know some of you are joining from Australia, some of you are joining from Central Europe, some of you are in the United States and trying to make this throughout the day. So, I'm humbled that you guys were interested in this. And so, I will be sending out a replay if you're not able to stay on the call for very long. But that said, I would love to hear from you and where you're from and what kind of business that you're in. You're in Los Angeles, South Bay area. Is it Gerlin? All right, good to see you. Yeah, what kind of business are you in, Gerlin? Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. All right, let's go ahead and get started because we have a lot of information to unpack, and I want to make sure that I'm hitting all of your questions as they come up. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is um, try your very best to avoid multitasking. I know it's super easy to do when you're in front of your computer, especially for an hour. But look, if you're spending an hour to learn selling, wouldn't it be worth it to just completely train your brain and not multitask for just a second? I know it's going to be really hard. I know our brains are really getting addicted to that little ding on our phone to pick it up, but train your brain, really start to focus in, learn to focus. It's just like a muscle. Focus is like a muscle. Focus in for the next hour, and I promise it will be worth your time. Oh, you're in real estate. Very good. That is where I make most of my money, and I just do this because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy teaching. I really enjoy coaching, and I love helping other people out, especially business owners. So I'm glad to have another real estate person here. All right, so let's get to it. What I want to talk about is, first and foremost, it's going to be important that I make the distinction in selling. When it comes to sales, there's really two kinds of buckets that they fall into. And one bucket is the one-to-one selling, and the other bucket is the one-to-many selling. Let me make the distinction right here. The difference is in the selling environment between the one-to-one and the one-to-many. So the difference is in the number of transactions, the number of transaction decisions. So in other words, I'm not sure if you're a realtor, Gerlin, but let's say for argument's sake that you're looking to either doing a listing, or you're representing a seller, or you're representing a buyer, or whatever. But whatever it is, if you are trying to have one conversation for one transaction decision, that's one to one, right? Even if it's like three or four people sitting at the table, if you're selling insurance, for example, and it's the mom making the decision with the adult child, it's still one buying decision, right? So that's one to one. That's a one to one selling, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. What we're not going to be talking about is selling one to many, where there's multiple buying decisions or multiple transactions going on in the room. So in other words, if I was selling let's say I was selling my book today, or selling a product, or selling a service today, um, I am that would be where each of you is making an individual transaction, and that is different. And I'm making that distinction now because selling one to one and selling one to many is a different conversation. You might think, well, selling is selling. It's not. And the reason why is because there's certain things that you have to do in one that you don't do in the other, and vice versa. And certain things you make sure you don't do in one that you absolutely have to do in the other. So I just want to make that distinction right now between selling one to one and one to many. This specifically is selling one to one, where you're, either shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee, sitting at a kitchen table, making decisions like that. That's the type of selling that we're going to be talking about today. Let me talk about why people hate selling. And I get this conversation, I get into this conversation all the time in terms of why people hate it. And they feel like they have to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. And, and the other side of this is they hate asking people for money. If this is true for you, what I'm going to be talking about today is to do this in a way that's natural, that's conversational, that's not feeling icky or gross, or feeling like you're holding people's head underwater when you're trying to get them to make the buying decision. So here's or you feel like you're bothering people. I didn't get to that last part of the slide, but yeah, you feel like you're bugging them. You're feeling like, man, I don't know, I've already called them twice. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm bugging them at this point, right? That listen, there is it's not about a shameful thing or anything like that. It's just you're doing your job as a sales professional because not everybody is on the buying train, is on the buying parade at the same time. So the people, in fact, very few people who come to you in that moment are ready to buy. They're maybe just in the information gathering stage or whatever. And we're going to talk about how to figure out where these people are at different in different parts of the buying conversation. So let's get into the agenda. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about the Viper method. The Viper methodology is a framework in terms of how I organize my business, and I can't not talk about that because I look at things from a top down perspective, and if things at the top are broken or if things foundationally are broken, it's gonna ripple through the rest of your organization. Even if you're just one person selling real estate, or even if you're just one person selling insurance, or if you're just one person doing whatever, the fact of the matter is you still have to have some foundational things in place. If you have multiple people, then all of those things are magnified. All of those problems are they only get worse as they ripple through the organization. And now you have 3 or 4 different people selling in very different ways, and none of them are in alignment. So this is really, really important for you to consider in the when you're putting together this framework. So first we're going to talk about the Viper method, and then we're going to talk about the 4 core functions of business that every business has to have. No matter what business that you're in, it has to have all 4 of these functions. Third, we're going to talk about lead generation, and we're only going to spend a minute on lead generation, and specifically as it relates to sales, because they have to be in alignment. If they're not in alignment, it's going to create confusion, not only for your avatar, not only for your potential buyer, but it's going to create confusion for your people and your staff. And if people are asking you, what do you do? And you can't come up with a clear answer, they're going to be like, oh, cool. And they're not going to buy with you. They're not going to do business with you because the confused mind will always say no. So, and that's the way they do it. They'll just be like, oh, okay, cool. They don't trust you enough to buy from you. They're going to go somewhere else. And number 5, we're going to talk about some success strategies that you can use to elevate yourself to the next level. All right. So we're talking first and foremost about a strategic approach to managing your life and your business. I am a strategist. Okay. So that is why I use that word. I know that sounds a little militant, but I'm a strategist at the end of the day. And this is really important to make sure that people are putting things together from a top-down approach so they know what it is that they're building. Everything in there that I mentioned is what I talked about, or what I talk about today is going to be in this book, The Time Wealthy Advantage. I'll talk more about that later. I'm not here to sell the book. I just wanted to point out the book is there because I'm going to reference this in an offer later, not an offer to sell you, but something called an offer stack. And that's something in sales that you have to get really good at so you know how to do this and do it well so it doesn't seem like icky or gross. Okay, so let's get to the Viper method. First and foremost, the Viper method is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. I'm not going to unpack all of these. This is something, if you want me to get into the nuts and bolts of this, I do this at a much deeper level on the Business Growth Accelerator. I don't have another one scheduled. I think it's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. I did one on Monday. If you'd like to go to YouTube, you can find the replay on that under Strategic Boardroom. But if not, and you'd like to see it live, lives, in my opinion, are always better. But if you don't have the time or stomach for that, that's totally fine. You can see it on YouTube. But here's the main thing: is the main premise is the Viper method. It follows first and foremost the vision in terms of where you want to go, the infrastructure in terms of what the business is built out of, the desks, the chairs, the software, things like that. The processes, right? The tactical day-to-day processes, how you do stuff, how you answer the phone. What's your sales process? What's your opening procedures or closing procedures? How do you prepare bank deposits? Things like that. And also the strategic part of process, like, what's your strategic plan? What's your strategic vision? Where are you going? Right? You built this warship. Now you want to take this warship out of the harbor. And then the next piece is execution, because most things fall apart in execution. So you have to have your things dialed in terms of where you want to go and how you want to do them. And then finally is the reporting function. It just gives you a highlight. That reporting function lets you know that what you did and the results that you got. And then all you just need to do is start tweaking what you did, right? Or what you're planning on doing. Because really, if you're just looking at the results and you're not getting the results you want, all you have to do is look at your actions and activities. Thank you, Lauren. Lauren put the link up there to my YouTube channel. So let's look at vision first and foremost. And the reason why I'm looking at vision first and foremost is because this is where usually people fall apart. And they're doing this where they're not recognizing that vision has two components. And those two components are personal vision and business vision. When it comes to personal vision is specifically where is it that you want to go. When you're looking at your business vision, it's like, okay, great, how are we going to get there? If you don't take the time to identify your personal vision now, it's not just going to magically appear. Most people, especially people who are in business for themselves, they have a business vision and no personal vision. So in essence, their business vision becomes their personal vision. And the problem with that is because you create a business vision before you create a personal vision, you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you, that sucks. Because I've been there. Back in 2008, when I was hustling in my real estate business. I had 93 rental units, and I had about $65,000 a month in rent revenues coming in per month. I had about $6.5 million worth of real estate. I mean, it was hopping, it was cranking. But the problem was I had absolutely no life. And I mean, it was every single day from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, every day, including Sundays. I couldn't even get sick. I mean, I couldn't even take any time off. And when I did try to take some time off, my phone did nothing but ring all day long. And every time my phone rang, I just would get that sick feeling in the middle of my chest, like there was something horrible going on. And sometimes it was. Sometimes someone would be calling me and they had 6 inches of water in their basement, and I didn't have anybody to call because I was the one on call. I had created a miserable job for myself and I couldn't extract myself from it. So it wasn't until later that things went really, really wrong, and I almost died in the hospital from double pneumonia because I was working so many hours, that things actually had to change. And when I really did put things in place, and this is where the Viper methodology came into place, I really started to recognize how important it was to really define my business vision that supported my personal vision, because I sure as hell didn't want to keep working all the time. So this is going to be really important for you to take time. Again, you have to slow down to speed up. If you want to be more effective at selling, you have to get really clear on what the 3 C's of your business vision are. So these 3 C's are your core purpose, your core values, and your client avatar. Now, I'm not going to unpack these at a very deep level, but what I'm going to tell you, a core purpose is specifically what business that you're in. So, Gerlin, for example, you had said that you're in real estate. That's great. But hopefully you know specifically what kind of real estate that you sell, what specifically you don't want to sell, what areas of your town you want to work with, or country, or whatever it is. But, to the exclusion of other stuff. I work with a lot of real estate investors, and they're like, oh, I'll do a deal anywhere. And I'm like, okay. And many times they are not as successful as they could be because they're literally spreading themselves over dozens of different markets. And I don't need to tell you, if you've been in real estate for more than 5 minutes, you will recognize that the north side of your town is probably very different from the south side of your town. And when someone says, oh, I do business in Texas, and I'm like, cool, where? They're like, the entire state. And I'm like, wow, there's like 17,000 markets in Texas. How in the world do you know what good value is from one side of the street to the other? You go to Tampa, literally one side of the street to the other side of the street, you could be looking at an A property versus a C property, and you wouldn't know the difference unless you knew the market. So that's why I'm saying it's really important that you know and get dialed in on your core purpose, and to the exclusion of other things. Think like Starbucks. Starbucks is really good at selling hot fluids. Okay. Could be hot coffee, could be hot tea, right? Or some sort of drink, right? They sell cold liquids too, right? But they don't sell soup, right? There's certain things that they don't do, right? They don't sell root beer floats, right? There's certain things they don't do, right? Because it falls outside of their core purpose. Let's look at core values. Core values is specifically what business, or what is important to you about this business, and why, what things are kind of the dividing line to say, nope, that's not an area that I believe in. That is outside of my core values. I'm not going there. And they're really important to define your core values because it really helps define your brand, not only your culture, but your brand. And that is really important because the brand and the culture are inextricably linked. And I used to teach this, and I actually forgot about it until I was going through some old materials. I'm writing my next book called Leader Boss, And I was reading through some notes. I was like, oh man, I forgot that was really good. And the reason why that's so important is because how you do business is really important to the brand that you're putting out to the world, and in your marketing and in your selling. So you really got to be dialed in on your core values, your personal core values, but also because your business is an extension of you, how you're going to operate in in your market. And I know there's a lot of realtors in my town. I would not send them business if it meant I would catch fire because they are horrible people. They're really mean to people, and I don't appreciate the way that they treat people, right? I just don't like the way that they do business. They don't match with my core values. So for me, I would rather not send them business if it meant, sending business to anybody. I would find someone who aligns with my core values. And there are a few here in my town who do align with my core values, and they get all of my referrals as a result of that. So that's why I'm looking for people who align with my core values. And this is the same thing for you and your selling. You should be looking for people who align with your core values. The last one is your avatar. And this is specifically who you want to work with. And you cannot get around this. If you're not clear in terms of who you want to work with, and I know like I get this question a lot, especially a lot in real estate and insurance and things like that. Like, I can't discriminate based on, different, those 7 protected classes. I get that. I'm not suggesting that you should. What I am suggesting though, is like, if you specifically want to work with people on this side of, like with properties on this side of town who are going to attract a certain type of people on that side of town. Okay, fine. Look, I don't care what color, nationality, creed, whatever. I don't care. As long as they're qualified buyers and they fit my avatar, and they match my core values, I'll work with them all day, all day long. I don't care who they are, right? I don't care what their beliefs are, as long as they align with my values. So that's the thing that for me, it's really, really important that I am defining my avatar very specifically. And you can do that by saying, no, this is the area of focus that I want to be in. I tend to attract families. I tend to attract whoever. But if you attract a single person, it's like, no, I don't care. I'll work with a single person. I'll work with a married couple. I don't really care, because that's what I'm saying. You're defining that by geographics. So all I'm suggesting here is you really have your client avatar very dialed in terms of who it is you want to work with. That way it doesn't get weird and icky. So you're like, well, I guess I really need the money, so I'm going to work with them, even though they don't match with anything that I do. This is really, really important, because like for me as a strategist, there's certain people I like working with, right? I like working with married couples. I like working with married Christian couples. I like working with married Christian couples who have kids, right? If they're not married, am I not going to work with them? No, of course not. I mean, as long as they align with my other values and they have the money and things like that, I mean, that's important to me, right? But if there's too many things that don't align, I might say they're just a better customer for someone else. So that's really important to get really clear on that. So let's look at the 4 core functions of business. The 4 core functions of business are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And you have to consider that the Viper method, it looks through the lens of all 4 of these functions, because the customer's journey happens in this order. It goes from lead generation to sales to operations and accounting, and you can't ignore that. So when you're looking at your lead generation, for example, let's look at lead gen. This is what lets the world know that you're out there through a variety of different marketing approaches. And what are some of those approaches? Well, there is outbound lead generation. There's inbound lead generation. There's direct response. There's networking. There's alliances. There's joint ventures, press releases, and affiliate marketing. What are all these things? Well, most of the time people confuse what outbound and inbound marketing is. It's very simple. It's who initiates. You're like, and you may not even necessarily really need to know this. I'm just going to give it for your own edification, because you may hear of influencers out there saying like, oh, let me help you with your inbound marketing strategy. Well, this is what it means. Outbound marketing strategy is like, it's initiated by the company, by the business. So in other words, it would be you're scrolling on Instagram and you get to an ad, right? It's interrupting your Instagram experience. That's interruption marketing. That's outbound marketing. You could think you're driving down the interstate and you see a billboard that interrupts your line of sight and it says, hey, free coffee. And you're like, cool, free coffee, next exit, right? So that's outbound marketing. That's interruption type marketing. If you're looking at inbound marketing, that is generally initiated by the customer, by the client. So in other words, you might say, what is the best way to brew coffee, right? So you go onto the Google and you go, hey, Mr. Google, what is the best way to brew coffee? And it pops up all the results, and then it's got a sponsored ad. Oh, do you want, coffee recipes or whatever, right? Like, cool, click. Right now, it's taking you to a white paper, which is telling you how to roast your own coffee, grind your own coffee, yada, 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 right? And now you're like, oh, cool. It brings you to a website. You download this paper. Because you went to that website, that's inbound. That is inbound marketing. You have initiated, and they had a thing out there which caught you in their net. So that's what the differences between inbound and outbound marketing are. Now, let me tell you about direct response. I prefer direct response, and direct response can be used either in outbound or inbound marketing. So, from this perspective, from inbound or outbound marketing, direct response is basically where you're getting the person to ask, like, to respond to something. Like, so you're going to say, hey, can you, if you're interested, for example, and this could be either outbound or inbound, if you're interested, go to this website right now, click here. Maybe you've seen it on Instagram where it's like, hey, would you like the top 15 reasons why people buy things? You're like, sure, I would love that, right? It's a free download. Just click type in 1 in the comments. That's direct response. That's getting you to respond. That's getting you to take a specific action so they can do something. They can either send you something. You're basically raising your hand saying, I want this. That's direct response. And I like direct response far more than anything else because it's trackable. Because if I put out an offer, and you're going to hear me talking about an offer here in just a few minutes, but when I talk about an offer, if you don't like the ad or you don't like the offer, you're not going to respond. So if the offer sucks or the ad sucks or the hook sucks, it's really only one of those three things. You didn't like the hook, which means you didn't watch the video. If you liked the hook and you saw the video, or if you didn't watch the video, that means the hook sucks. If you you were on, but you bounced after like 3 seconds, that means the video sucks. If you watched the whole thing and then bounced, that means the offer sucks. It's really not that complicated. And the thing is, when it comes to lead generation, this is why direct response is so important. And you might be thinking, what does this have to do with selling? It matters how they come to you because it matters. The initial conversation absolutely matters. So as they're walking through that journey, you have to pick up the conversation that was started by the marketing. Does it make sense? Does that make sense? So you're asking, Gerlin, is direct response the same as call to action? So that's a great question. Call to action, sometimes known as CTA. So a call to action is generally you're going to have a very specific call to action within direct response. Direct response is kind of like the type of marketing. Call to action is to say, hey, Gerlin, what I want you to do is go to strategicboardroom.com/events, sign up for my next class right now. I'll wait for you while you do it. I gave you a very specific direction and very specific action, right? That's direct response. So I'm not expecting you to, please don't multitask. Stay here with me, right? But I'm just saying, like, if you did that, that's a very specific thing. So the call to action, to your point, Gerlin, it has to be very, very, very specific and very, very clear. If I said, yeah, go to my website, click on the thing and do the thing, you're like, well, what's your website? What do you mean by the thing? And what do you mean by the other thing? You need to be really specific in your CTA. So thank you for bringing that up, especially in direct response. So again, this isn't the marketing. We had marketing magic on Tuesday, but yeah, but that's a really, really good point. If you're talking about networking is really about connecting others for the purposes of getting and passing referrals. And I'm just letting you know, networking is a slow burn. It takes time. Many people, they try to rush that. And I was in BNI for a number of years, about 14 years, and made friends with the founder of BNI, amazing man, Ivan Meisner, and he's helped me in ways I could never repay him. He endorsed my first couple of books, and I'm just very, very proud to know him. The reason that I like that is one of the things he talked about was many people try to get too fast down to the profitability, right? So you have to think about, well, first you get to visibility, then you get to credibility, then you get to profitability. And it's that VCP model. If you go when you like right now, you guys are just barely visible. I'm very barely visible to you guys, which means like you're just getting to know me. Like, okay, and this guy's got a quirky sense of humor. Like, who is this guy? But as I'm demonstrating more credibility to you, you're like, huh, okay, maybe he does know some things, right? Then when I have enough credibility, that's what builds that trust. And that's when you get to profitability. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to do business with me, but from a networking perspective, now you go, hey, you know what, Gerlin, maybe you're not going to buy from me, but you're like, man, you know what? I know this other guy, though, who could really use this guy's help, right? Hey, Mark, maybe you want to have a conversation with this guy. That's networking, okay? And networking just takes time. And credibility takes time to build, and so does trust. And the fastest way to demonstrate your trust, or fastest way to build your trust, is to demonstrate credibility, demonstrate competence, okay? So that's networking. Alliances, really quickly. This is not going to apply to most of the people on this call. Alliances and joint ventures are similar. They tend to be less formal, but they're formed by two companies that have they have complementary industries, but they have the same avatar or very similar avatar. So think of like Starbucks and Barnes and Noble, right? So Barnes and Noble has a bookstore, and then they have a Starbucks inside the Barnes and Noble, right? American Express and Delta Airlines, right? They have the Delta Sky Miles American Express card. Both companies remain separate, but they operate under what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. Joint ventures, they tend to be more formal, where two entities form a new legal entity, and they tend to be from two completely different industries, right? Where you have that's just something that they tend to do. And then affiliate marketing is where you may get someone else who will actually sell your stuff for you, right? So you actually operate as an affiliate. So that's pretty common, but those are just various marketing approaches that you tend to see. So all of this stuff, all of these approaches are contingent on being really clear on your core purpose, your core values, and your client avatar. You have to be clear on all three of these. I hate to sound like a broken record, but if you're not going to spend time on these, you're going to continue to struggle, or you're not going to be at the level that maybe you're not struggling. Maybe you're trying to get to the next level, but if you are trying to get to the next level and you're not clear on these, just take a little bit of time and get clear on them so you can speak to them very clearly without any question in terms of what it is that what your core purpose is, your core values, and your client avatar. So because the more clear that you are, the easier it is going to be to market to your people. And it makes them much easier to find, and it makes it much easier to sell to. So now, as we're starting to talk about the selling conversation, all it does, like I mentioned before, is it continues the conversation that was started in the marketing approach, right? And again, this is why people hate selling. They hate selling because they feel like they have to convince somebody. They hate asking people for money, and they feel like they're bothering people, right? This is the ick that I'm talking about. So let's talk about how not to get that icky feeling. Let's start to lead people down that path with value. So when you start thinking about the reasons that people buy, and I'll put this all the way up. In fact, I'm going to get my mug out of the way so you can take a screenshot if you want to. But there's 15 reasons why people will buy. And if you understand why they will buy, you recognize they're buying because they want to make money. They want to save money. They want to save time, avoid effort, escape pain. And avoiding effort is just making things easy, right? Escaping pain is emotional pain, sometimes physical pain. They want to be more comfortable. They want better health, and sometimes that's in the form of less stress. So how can you help them get less stress? How can you help them gain praise in their life, especially from the people that care about them? How can you help them feel more love, increase their status? Okay, people will buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. They will buy for growth, sometimes personal growth, sometimes their wellness, right? They will buy because just because something is new and improved. They'll buy for more certainty or more perceived control, and they will certainly buy to be in contribution to others. This is really important. So what I want you to do as some homework is I want you to stop it for a second and think about all the different ways, right? And this is what I like to do. Go ahead and get 15 sheets of paper, stick them up on the walls in your office, house, I don't care where you put them. And right on the top, each one of these 15 reasons: make money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain, etc., etc. And I want you to think of all the ways, directly and indirectly, how you can help people make money. Directly or indirectly, how you can help people make money. And you should come up with multiple reasons. You should fill up that page of all the ways that you can help them directly or indirectly make money. And think about all the ways you can help them directly or indirectly save money and save time and avoiding effort, escaping pain, and more comfort, better health, gaining praise, right? So my point here is that the more reasons that you can come up with, and some of them are going to be bizarre, but I promise you somewhere between 7 and 14, probably, you're going to come up with one that goes, oh, wow, that was a really good one. I never thought of that. And that's because you're allowing your reticular activation system to work. You're allowing your subconscious to go to work at it. And I'm telling you, if you do this exercise, you will be really, really clear in terms of what your avatar needs and how your product or service can help them. And you might think, well, yeah, I already know what I'm doing. Yeah, but I'm just telling you, so did I until I did this. And I got really, really dialed in terms of what my avatar really needed. So take that time to get really clear in terms of how you can help them with all 15 ways that people will buy, and you will absolutely launch your ability to sell to them because now you're bringing stuff to them that they actually need. All right, so now let's talk about some success strategies and some things that you can do. This is going to be I've got about 30 minutes left, so this is going to be, some of this is going to get a little granular, which I know some of you are looking for some granular stuff, but I'm also going to get into some basics. So just hang in there with me. I promise this is going to be worth it. But this is where the success strategies are, where you're going to align your lead generation and your sales. And you have to have some discernment on this, right? Because, everything, first and foremost, we're going to talk about aligning the lead generation and sales. Then we're going to talk about learning to sell, right? And selling the right way, and then having a support system. Okay. Now before I jump to the next slide, this is where you have to have some discernment. And I'm going to be talking about laying the groundwork for selling effectively, which also includes having the correct buying environment. In case I don't make this point later, I want to make this point now. The buying environment is so important for you to control. It's so important for you to control the buying environment and setting the buying environment if you can. I'll give you a great example. So my wife was we were sitting, we have a 19-year-old, we have a 17-year-old, and we have a soon to be 3-year-old. And Lily, she's a lot of kid. Like, she's just a pill, right? So she's our 3-year-old. And Jen took a call the other day and she wasn't sure who it was. And it was somebody trying to sell her something that she legit wanted. Okay. And I was getting ready to leave and I said, do you want me to go? She's like, no, I got it. Right. Whatever. Well, I ended up leaving. Well, come to find out, Jen did not finish that phone call because she was in the kitchen. Lily was in the living room and something crashed. And of course, Lily starts crying. It wasn't anything big. Nothing broke. And Lily was fine. But in that moment, what do you think happened to the buying environment? That person could have been offering gold bricks for 2 cents a piece, and Jen would not have wanted them because she had an environment that all of a sudden changed. That salesperson did not have control over that buying environment. If they did, they would have known right away, hey, do you have 10 or 15 minutes to talk to me where you could be uninterrupted? Now, you could say that and set that in another way, but I'm just saying, like, if they didn't, that's the problem. So you have to recognize, you have to be able to control your buying environment. Just like, you could be walking into a Walmart and someone opens the trunk of their car and goes, hey, do you want to buy a watch? And the watch could be like, no, dude, I'm not gonna buy a watch, right? But you can walk into Walmart or some other store and it's underneath this like nice little case and you're like, hey, you want that watch for $40? You're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'll take 3 of them, right? Because the buying environment is different. Even though it could have been a completely exactly the same watch, right, in the same case, but it was out of the trunk of someone's car. So I'm just saying, like, you have to recognize the buying environment when you're selling. If you don't, your sales will struggle. So let's get to the quick story that I want to share with you here. For those of you who are American football fans, I know there's people who watch this from all over, but Vince Lombardi was an absolute legend. And he led the Green Bay Packers in 1961, 62, 65, 66, and 67. And the Packers never, ever had a losing season. And this is something where when he would go in and he went into after losing a very close game at the end of 1961 and going into the 1961 season, he walked in and he said to these giant men who had been playing football for most of their lives, and he walked in And he looked around at the room at these people who have been playing professional football. I mean, they just lost at that time. It was the championship game. They didn't call it the Super Bowl back then. But they lost the championship game. Many of them were still on the team. And he looked at them and he said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he literally walked them through all the basics, from how to tie their shoes to how to put on their gear to making sure that it was just strict, like blocking and tackling and everything else. And it was even one Pro Bowler had said, "Hey, coach, could you slow down a little bit?" Right? Making fun of the fact that he's going back through the basics. And it was said that Vince Lombardi smirked and went right back to the basics. The point is that there's a lot of people who come to me, where these trainings that are looking for like this golden nugget that's going to elevate them to above all this other status that, it's like no one else is doing this. You want to know what no one else is doing? They're not doing the basics. And that is why you cannot avoid them. And because if you're avoiding the basics, look, I get it. They're boring, and boredom comes from repetition, but you cannot achieve mastery without repetition. So I just want to make that point here because I'm going to be hitting some things that are somewhat basic and you're like, "Oh yeah, I know that." Okay, but are you doing them? Because if you're not, there's no point in trying to go to more advanced stuff because you're just not ready for them yet. So when you're ready to proceed, that's when you start aligning your lead generation and your sales. And the reason that you want to align your lead generation and your sales is because if they're not aligned, I mean, the sales function, like I said, the sales function picks up where the lead generation function picks up, leaves off. So for example, if you go from like a website where someone says, "Hey, buy my book," and you click on it, and then they go to a site that looks completely different, you're gonna be like, "Am I on the right site?" Right? It doesn't look the same. Right? Or if you ever walked up to like a a really nice restaurant and you walk inside and it stinks and you're like, "What smells in here?" Right? The buying environment is wrong. The lead gen of the nice shiny building outside, and you walk in and it's all run down and crappy looking, it doesn't match up. Okay? And if you're not aligned, they are going to be confused. Your buyers will be confused. And I'm just letting you know that if they are confused, the confused mind will always say no. And all of your effort, all of your lead generation function is for nothing. So that's why all of your efforts that you're doing in your lead generation, which is picked up by the sales, is directed to one core offer. Now, I'm going to spend a few minutes on the core offer because many people are horrible at this, including me. Again, if I had 3 hands, I'd put them all up because I was horrible at creating an offer. But what is the core offer that you're bringing to them? Not like 71 different offers. You have to bring one core offer to them, because if you're not bringing a core offer, if you don't know what your offering is, again, well, who's going to get more clear? If it's not clear to you, it's not going to get magically more clear in their head. You've got to be really clear about what your core offering is. And many times when I ask this specific question, like, "Well, what's your core offer? What service, what product or service do you specifically provide?" And many times it's like, "Well, I'm this or that." And it sounds either very generic, like, "Well, why would I go with you and not them?" Right? Like, what's the difference between you and them? To me, again, if both of you look the same, I mean, the only decision I have to make at that point is based on price. Well, that sucks. Right now, it's a race to the bottom. I want to make sure I'm differentiated in the market. I want to make sure that my core offering is different. And I'm going to show you an example of how I do that. So let me put this disclaimer out there first and foremost. I'm not trying to sell the book. I'm going to make an offering to you in terms of what this looks like. Okay? So just let me clear the air on that. This is not about selling the book. This is about showing you and demonstrating to you how to make an offer. Okay. So if you went to Amazon and you wanted to buy this book, you would pay $34.95. Okay. So for those of you, let's say that for those of you in the United States, and this is the offer that I would make for people in the United States, if you're in the United States, if you want to buy it from me for $34.95, I will sign the book and I will send it to you, and I will include a free bookmark. Okay. That's not anything that I can do through Amazon, because once Amazon fulfills the order, I don't even know who buys it. So is that offer of me signing it with your name, with my signature, writing a little note in there maybe, sticking a bookmark in it, and mailing it to you directly. Is that more inherently more valuable than the $34.95 for Amazon? For most people, it would be, right? For some people, they're like, no, I don't want your signature on it. Okay, great. No problem. Not everybody's going to take every offer, but that is a different offer. Let's look at offer number 2. In the US, again, let's say that you order the book through me. I'll sign it. I'll stick a bookmark in there, and I'm going to throw in a free 40-page accounting guide, and I'm going to throw in a free 40-page strategic one-sheet guide. Okay? And both of these things, the accounting guide will help you get your finances sorted out, figured out, so you know what you're looking at, and the strategic one-sheet guide will help you organize and prioritize your strategy. Okay? Again, all for $34.95. Okay. Now, is that more inherently valuable? I think it's pretty easy to say yes. You're getting a signed book, bookmark, the accounting guide, and the strategic one-sheet guide. Okay, all for $34.95. Okay, that's another offer. Let's look at a different offer. Okay, so this other offer is where you could buy the book. Okay, and from me, I'll sign it. I will include the bookmark with it. I will include the 40-page accounting guide, the 40-page strategic planning guide. That'll help you get your finances figured out, help you organize your strategy. And I will also throw in a 30-minute strategy session with me for $34.95. That sounds pretty good, right? I mean, you're getting all this extra stuff. Now, let me make one last offer. The offer would be me signing the book, me sticking a bookmark in there, both 40-page the accounting guide, strategic planning guide, okay, the 30-minute session, and I will lower the price from $34.95 to $29.97. Okay, now I gave you this offer, and I'm showing you this offer because I'm demonstrating. Did I just go straight to slashing price? No, most people who sell think that they have to cut price in order to do it. What did I do? What did I add? What did I increase? I increased the value, right? Now, the strategic planning guides are not super expensive, and I had already baked in the cake that I could sell all of this for $29.97. And this is actually a real offer on my website. I think it's $29.97. But the point is not to sell this to you. The point is to show you that I increased the value, not just cut the price. Because the minute I was like, you already know the book is worth $34.95. That's what it sells for on Amazon. But the minute I can demonstrate that it's more valuable to go through this other offer with me, and you're like thinking, well, why in the world would I do that? The reason I would do that is because now I have someone's address, I have their email, I have their phone number, I can have conversation with them. If they just buy it on Amazon, I may or may not ever hear from them again, and I don't have any way of controlling that. Does that make sense? So this is why I don't care if you're a real estate person, if you're an insurance person, if you're a website maker, I don't care what business that you're in. You need to find a way to be capturing the people rather than just sticking your name on a billboard and going, well, I hope they call me. And you're never going to know why they called you. Did they see you on the back of a bus? Or did they see you like somewhere else? Like, where did they see you? If it's not direct response, you're never going to know. So this is a form of direct response. So this is why I like this. So I'm just saying that this is an offer stack, and this offer stack is also what I would do in a selling conversation. So I would say, and did you notice what I did on every single thing? I restated everything in an offer stack. Hey, by the way, you get the book. I'll sign it and stick the thing in. And then what did I say? Or, right, you can get the book and this guide, and the 30-minute session, right? You see how I restated it every single time? That's important. Because if you just say, well, I'll throw in this, and then I'll throw in this, and I'll throw in this, people will lose this, right? Now, this is important for something that you can do when you're selling one-to-many, but you can absolutely do this really, really well when you're doing this with one-to-one selling. And you can do it. You don't have to be like dogmatic about it. You can skip some steps in there if you want, but make sure at the very end, they hear you say all of it. It's like, okay, hold on just a second. So let me just, because I know we've been talking about a couple different things here. Yes, you would get the book, I'll sign it. I'll stick in the bookmark. I'll get that to you. And I'll go ahead and give you the two guides. And I'll get you the 30-minute session. And all of that will be for the $29.97. Does that sound cool? Right? So you don't necessarily have to go through every single step every single time. Make it conversational. Don't be a jerk about it. The issue here is that when you are having this conversation with folks, you want to follow this problem, agitate, solve, or problem, agitate, solution model in when you're having these sales conversations. So you're initiating, hey, what are your problems? What, you want to agitate, rub salt on the wound, and then you want to give the solution, right? So if you're thinking about this, this is exactly how every commercial shows up, right? Do you owe back taxes to the IRS? Are you getting rubbing salt in the wound? Are you getting those phone calls in dinner time? Are you getting those lean messages? Are you getting blah, blah, blah? Agitate. Fortunately, you can call this tax planning service or whatever solution, right? So problem, agitate, solve. This is the methodology and the framework that's been used over and over and over and over and over. It's been used for over 100 years. So what I'm going to talk about first and foremost is a discovery call. And the discovery call, you really need to make sure that you're asking initial questions. So when they are getting in front of you, you want to make sure that you're asking these specific questions. So this is the initial call that you're getting on with folks. They've raised their hand. They say, yes, I'm interested. Like, for example, now I wouldn't necessarily have a discovery call for people like buying my book. That makes no sense. But if I am having a one-to-one conversation with them, again, we're talking about one-to-one selling, and I already know what my offer is. My offer, I use the book as an example, but it wouldn't be a good example because I'm not going to get on a discovery call for people buying my book. The price point is too low, and I would literally be on the phone all day if I was going to be doing that. That makes no sense because the buying threshold is much lower. But if I was asking someone to sign up for a $10,000 coaching package or $30,000 consulting package, yeah, I absolutely would need to get on a discovery call with them. So I just want to make sure that there's a threshold there. So when I get on this discovery call with them, if I'm selling real estate, selling insurance, whatever it is that I happen to be selling, look, I'm going to be looking, and I want to qualify my prospects first and foremost. So I'm going to first ask them, how soon are they looking to address this issue? Like, hey, what kind of issue you got going on, right? And now they're going to tell me, great. First and foremost, how soon are they looking to address this? Like, how quickly are they looking to get this thing fixed in their life? That's a really important question. Next is, what kind of budget are they working with to solve this problem? Because if they don't have a budget to solve this issue, there's really no point in working for free. And I don't know about you, I'm not about working for free. The third thing is, who are all the decision makers? And the reason I want to know who the decision makers are is because if I don't know who the decision makers are, I may be wandering into an appointment and go, oh, well, let me talk to my wife about it. Anybody ever, that ever happened? Anybody? Look, I want all the decision makers at the table when I'm setting that appointment. So if I'm going into a discovery call, I'm just talking about a call right here, like, hey, okay, cool. You want to meet with me? Great. Hey, it's just a 15-minute, let me get to know you a little bit. Tell me what your issue is. Cool. How soon are you, like, how quickly are you looking to address this? How soon are you looking to address this? Okay, you're looking to build a house. Cool. Well, we probably need to get started in the next few months if you want it built by, next summer, that sort of thing. What kind of budget are you working with? Who are all the decision makers that need to be involved? And finally is, have you ever worked with someone in my industry before? Now, why? Let me get my head out of the way so you guys can take a screenshot of that. So why am I asking if they've ever worked with someone before? Because it lets me know, like, then I can just simply ask them, like, okay, cool. How was that experience? Did you have a good experience or bad experience? Regardless of what they say, it opens the window to say, cool, well, let me show you how I work. If they say horrible experience, cool, let me show you how I work. They say amazing experience, cool, well, let me show you how I work. Either way, works either way. All right, so what we're going to be talking about going into the rest of the 10 minutes or so is going to be a solutions-based selling approach. And it's really important that you take the time to do your research specifically on your avatar, and you have got to know your people. You've got to know your avatar really, really well. There's just no getting around this. You need to know them demographically, you need to know them geographically, and you need to know them psychographically. You need to know what is keeping them up at night, and you need to know what makes them tick. And you also need to know your product and service cold. You cannot get around this, right? And you also need to know their level of pain, because if you don't know their level of pain, they're not going to operate. They're not going to move very quickly, because people move vastly faster out of pain than they will towards pleasure. That's just human nature. So when you're getting into that conversation with them, first and foremost, you want to have a bonding and rapport session. Now, that bonding and rapport session is really, really important because you're asking them questions like you're just, hey, tell me about what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And most people think like, oh, this is just me being nice. No. What you're looking for is you're looking for something that you're going to use here in just a second called the upfront contract. Now, the upfront contract, when you're having this conversation with folks, this upfront contract is where you're just basically going to say to them, hey, look, tell me about what it is that you've got going on. The upfront contract is going to say, cool, I want you to remember this. No, no. Yes, yes. Biggest fear. No, no. Yes, yes. Biggest fear. Okay? So when I am using the upfront contract and I'm remembering this framework, no, no, yes, yes, biggest fear, I may say to Lauren, so, well, and as I'm transitioning out of bonding rapport, we're chit chatting, we're looking, hey, have you ever worked with someone in my area before? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Like, no. Okay. Perfect. Well, hey, let's have this conversation. Right. Look, hey, Lauren, before we get started, by the way, we've already started. Hey, Lauren, before we get started, I just want to let you know, look, I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want to let you know that you can totally tell me no, that if anything that I have today just doesn't suit you for what you need, you can tell me no. I promise my wife is going to love me still. I'm still going to eat dinner tonight. Everything's going to be fine. I just wanted to give you permission to tell me no. All right. But just keep in mind that if I don't feel that what I have to offer is the best fit for you, I may tell you no. Okay. Now, if you decide that it's a good fit for you and I think it's a good fit for you, we say yes, and then we can figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that sound fair? And I'm waiting for the yes. I'm waiting for the nod. I'm waiting for the affirmation on the other side. Now notice what I did there. I said, you can tell me no. Takes the pressure off of them. I can tell you no. And they're going, you don't get to tell me no. Right? That's what happens. Do we love hearing no as children? Do we love it anymore as adults? Exactly. So me saying, hey, Lauren, I may tell you no. She's now leaning in to go, you don't get to tell me no. Right? It's subtle and it's very important that you say this because it really kind of levels the playing field so no one's feeling any pressure. Everyone feels at ease because I've already told them that I might tell them no if that's not the best fit. So I might tell you no, you can tell me no. Now, if we say yes, right, you say yes, I say yes, we figure out what that looks like on the other side. Does that sound fair? And I'm waiting for the affirmation. It's called a shy yes. I'm waiting for them to say yes. Okay, cool. So my biggest fear, now, where am I digging up this biggest fear? My biggest fear is based on, hey, have you ever worked with someone like this before? No, blah, 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 or yes, blah, blah, blah. Either way, I've already gotten information from them about what it's like to work with us. Okay? So my biggest fear is not my biggest fear. It is their biggest fear. Look, Lauren, my biggest fear is that you're going to try to work with a strategist who really doesn't care about you, is not going to take the time to get to know you well. And I just don't want you to be getting taken advantage of because, quite frankly, just there's too much time being wasted on stuff that's not going to be helpful. All right. So is there anything specific that you're trying to accomplish today? So you notice that transition. My biggest fear is what she is fearing the most. That's why it's important to know the avatar. And my transition is going to be, is there anything specific you're trying to accomplish today? That's an important, so Lauren may say, well, I'm really trying to just shopping, just figuring this out, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Right. Whatever it is, it allows you to transition out of that upfront contract into the next part of this, where you're uncovering the pain. All right. So tell me what it is that you've got going on, Lauren. Tell me what it is that you've got going on, Gerlin. Right. As you're uncovering this and it's like, okay, cool. So if I'm understanding is, and all you're doing is asking good questions at that point in time, you're not demonstrating anything. If anything, you're asking lots of qualifying questions. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Right? Learn to ask good questions. And when you can ask good questions, and you should be getting 3 and 4 deep on every one of those lines of thought, but you're always keeping it directed towards the sale. That is your moral obligation as the salesperson, not to wander off into nothingness, like meaningless conversation, but specific. And you might say, well, no, we were bonding and rapporting. No. The bonding and rapporting time is done. You're staying in rapport with them, but you're saying, okay, hey, let me bring it back here real quick because I want to make sure that I'm doing my job as a sales guy. But hey, if I'm and I'm not saying you're always like being aggressive about it. Let the conversation go off, but your job is to bring it back to advancing the sale. That's your job. So as you're doing that, you say, well, look, let me bring us back to the conversation here a little bit. So from what I'm understanding is you're worried about this, you're worried about this, you're worried about this. Okay, great. Would you be open to some thoughts on that? When you rarely is anybody ever going to say no, shut your mouth, right? Hey, would you be open to some thoughts on that? And that's where you start demonstrating competence. When you're demonstrating competence, what did I mention about demonstrating competence? What does demonstrating competence do? It allows you to create trust. Because when you can demonstrate competence, that you know what you're talking about. If you're selling a roof, you're like, hey, look, I understand that the roof is leaking. You're not really sure, how much it's going to take to fix. Realistically, we're probably going to have to tear the roof off. It doesn't make sense to repair at this point because you've tried repairing it a couple different times. You're probably going to get the same result. There's something up there that's wrong with the roof structure, and it's really going to be hard to pin down. So my suggestion, rather than trying to patch it, you may just be better off. You'd be money ahead by just tearing the whole thing off, putting a whole new substrate down, whole new decking down, right? Plywood, right? Don't talk over them, and doing it that way. And you're going to get a warranty in it because you're telling me that you were trying to sell this house in the next couple of years because you want to relocate to the south. Do you want to relocate to Tucson where your daughter lives? Great, right? Blah, 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 right? This is where you can demonstrate competence and let them know that you actually care. All right. Now, there's one other thing, and it's not on the slide. I got to fix this. But the one other thing on this is to make sure that you like, okay, cool. And now once you've gotten to the end of the sales conversation, this is the thing where you're not having this ick. You just say, cool. So if I'm understanding this right, now you're walking them through the conversation. This is just conversational. And you're just saying, okay, cool. So if I'm understanding it's this, it's this, it's this, and we can do this, this, and this, right? And you're like, okay, cool. Did you have any other questions? No. Okay. Well, how do you want to proceed? And that silence is on purpose. I'm not talking. I'm not filling the air. I'm letting them think. I don't care if it's uncomfortable because it's not uncomfortable to me. If they're uncomfortable, they can fill it with words if they want to. But I'm just saying, how do you want to proceed? That's the big close. That's it. So I'm understanding this. I'm understanding this. I'm understanding this. Okay, cool. Yep. Well, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this for you. Did you have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, how did you want to proceed? And that's when they'll start to say, well, what's it like to work with you, right? And that's when you can unleash the offer, like reveal the offer, and this is what it's like, blah, 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 and this is the next steps, and so forth and so on, right? So whatever the offer is, and I know there's just too many people, in this different industries to get real granular with that, but it doesn't change that much. This is where you bring that offer into them, and you're letting them know what the offer actually is, okay? So the one thing at the very end, let's assume that they have wanted to do work with you, and this is where you're going to say, okay, cool, let me demonstrate something. Okay, hey, before you sign the papers, let me just ask you, why are you okay to move forward? This is called a post-sell. This is called a post-sell. And the post-sell is really, really important because the post-sell will vastly reduce the amount of callbacks and people who are going to say, oh, I don't want this, I changed my mind, right? This is really, really important. So you're going to ask them, hey, before you sign the papers, just tell me, why are you okay to do this? Because people buy emotionally and they justify logically. You're asking them to justify logically in that moment. That way the neighbor doesn't come up and go, oh man, you got totally ripped off on that car, right? No, I bought it because I wanted to buy it. And I feel good about this. I feel good about working with you. I feel about this. I feel like, blah, blah, blah. Like you're not just going to leave me after the sale, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, cool. Cool. Because now when the neighbor comes up and goes, dude, you got ripped off. I'm like, no, I didn't. I got a great deal. You don't know the deal. Shut your mouth. Right? So that's why I'm saying that's really important. Now, here's something that most salespeople suck at. Look at the slide. Follow them. Follow up, follow through, follow them. Make sure that they are having a good experience and you continue to have that good experience because here's the thing. there's something known as the peak end rule. The peak end rule. Most people will remember when it comes to an experience, they're either going to remember the peak and they're going to remember the end. It's the same thing with this training. There's a peak and there's an end. And you can control, it's kind of hard for you to control the peak, but you can absolutely control the end. So just make sure that you take the time to actually get a little bit, make sure that the ending is actually very good for them. So there was one other thing that you still need to do, and that's make sure that you get your referral, right? Ask them for the referral. Hey, by the way, if this was a good experience for you, please make sure, do you have anybody that you might think would be, that you can refer my way, right? That would be something that you can ask for, and making sure. And quite frankly, I ask for that generally during the discovery call. Hey, by the way, do you know anybody who? And you're asking for that referral. Okay. So the nice thing about this is having a good solid support system. If you guys are interested and are of the Facebook sort, you guys can go to, take those slides down. You guys can go to our Facebook page, which is, if Lauren, you'll go ahead and post that up there. That is a free group where you guys can come and join. And again, just don't be a jerk. If you're a jerk, don't come, because we don't like jerks in the room. But I post stuff in there from time to time, and soon I will post the. I'm actually going to start posting these sessions through that group, so that way you don't even have to sign up for Eventbrite anymore. As long as you're in that room, you can actually get to see these right through there on time. But if you're in there, unfortunately, you won't be able to put the comments in there because we're not going to be monitoring that. But anyway, just letting you know if that's something you'd be interested in. All right, that is all I have, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate you. And if you do have any questions, we're going to be emailing you just to make sure that you get the replay. And you can email back, say, hey, I do have a question about X, Y, or Z, and I'll get back in touch with you. I'll make sure they do that. But keep an eye out for, we're going to be sending it through the events email. So I just want to make sure that you guys know to look for that, especially Google. Gmail does not like us. Gmail is not our friend. I don't know why. All right. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time.